do a. I did an opera. That's kind of multimedia.
Yes, you did. That
I've
surprised me
done
too.
stupid things.
That
Yeah.
surprised me too when preparing for this interview. I was like, what? Really? Is that still showing anywhere?
It pops up every now and again. I think there's another in Albuquerque. Danny's putting something together there. I'm talking to the Portland Opera Company about doing. Every now and again, we'll pull it together and do some performances. It's nice. It's a real opera. It's not like, oh, we took Rossini and added some a different libretto or something dumb like that. It's like I worked with a composer and we actually wrote this opera. Um, but yeah, that I was looking for something that would make less money than a comic book, I think.
Welcome back to the
Okay.
Comics Cube, everyone. I am with Eisner Award winning Shannon Wheeler. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
So here's the thing about your work is I started collecting in like 1991 or something.
Yeah.
I've always been aware of your work, and it seems that that was a time when things were booming. Um, and it has changed since. But before I get to that, the first question I ask everyone who comes on the show is, why do you love comics?
I was thinking about this the other day, and it's because when I was a little kid, comics were magic. I mean, literally, I read comics and just what they could do, I could not fathom. It was a frozen image, and it creates a narrative inside your head, a story. And I just remember one strip where there's a cat looking at a spot on the ground, and the spot got bigger and bigger. And then, it's like a hole in the ground. And then the hole, it was actually a shadow of a bag of groceries that hit the cat in the head. And I just thought that was magic. I really did. And I just thought, I want to make magic like this.
You're known, of course, for humor comics. But the thing with that is, I feel like, humor's very subjective. Is there a is there a science to it, to how you come up with the gags?
Desperation. Um, there is sometimes. I mean, sometimes there are certain equations where you figure something out and you're like, okay, this is how this works. But when it works well, it's really it's mysterious. Where what I like is when I have a setup and I'm kind of flowing along, and then something comes in from the ether that is really unexpected, and it just informs me on what to draw next. And I just it can just be this crazy. Like I had in the first, I'm just rereading the early stuff, and I had Too Much Coffee Man fighting trademark copyright man, and then I didn't know where it was going to go, and I was just kind of. So I had Too Much Coffee Man bring in his lawyer because it was a legal battle over the logo of TMCM. They both had TMCM logo, and then I just had the other lawyer eat Too Much Coffee Man's lawyer, and it just made it was so stupid, but that kind of non sequitur where it kind of makes sense in the context, but it's completely unexpected. I really like that's what is the funniest to me, but I can't. That doesn't happen nearly as often as figuring out. Okay, here's this dumb little thing, and you sort of do this little folded on itself way.
Who are your What was the spark that made you start drawing and making comics?
Um, that's probably Charles Schultz, and it was like a 60-minute special, and they were filming him writing one of his strips, and it was Snoopy outside in a doghouse, sitting on the doghouse, and it was snowing. And he just started in panel one and just started drawing. And I watched that and I just thought, oh, that's how to do it. Okay, you just sit down and start drawing rather than thinking about it. forever. You just do it.
Awesome. You have a favorite Peanuts character?
Schroeder. I don't know. There's something. I've always liked Schroeder. Um,
Really?
and yeah, the
I've
piano. I
never
mean,
heard
that was just
anyone
like,
ever say that.
really?
Yeah.
Who's it usually?
Peppermint Patty.
Oh, she's great. The woman that she was based on, her granddaughter actually was my barista when I lived in down by Woodstock in
Really?
South Portland. That was the legend. That's what I don't know if it's, I think it's true, but
When did you start drawing professionally?
oh gee, I mean, in college they paid, and it was $10 a strip, so $50 a week, 200 a month. And that to me was a fortune. And so I started there drawing single panel comics, and then I eventually moved into doing these strips for them, and then I tried to syndicate my college strip. I moved to Texas. Um, I guess when I got Too Much Coffee Man #1 out, that's when I quit working at the video store. So I quit working a job then.
Can you talk
I
about?
went
Yeah, go ahead.
professional. I don't know. Professional. I don't know that I've ever been professional.
If it pays the bills. How did you come up with the idea of Too Much Coffee Man?
Um, that I was doing college strips, and uh, I mean, I now I look back and it's just like the amount of talent that was at the college paper is amazing. I mean, Chris Ware was cartooning, Matt Madden was there, Robert Rodriguez, who's gone on to do filmmaking, um, Tom King, Jeanette Moreno, Walt Holcomb. Everybody was just incredibly talented. And I had a strip in there, but every time I'd meet people, they'd say, "Oh, what cartoon do you do?" And I was competing with all these really, amazing people. And oh, it's the one with the talking dog. And oh, yeah, I think I know that one. So I try. It's like, oh, I need to do a comic character that's iconic, something everybody loves and knows, and is easy to recognize. So I thought something with a handle on it. So as a joke, I did the character with a coffee handle, so it's easy to grab onto. Uh, and I thought when I first started, I was like, okay, I'll pull one or two gags out of this little side thing, but it oddly became a real voice inside myself. Like it was just this kind of an id character that really voiced something that I had churning already. So it was real natural. I felt it.
For people who are not aware of what Too Much Coffee Man is, would you like to give a quick elevator pitch?
Oh, I'm the worst at the elevator pitches.
That's
And
what
when
a
I've
bunch
done,
of you say, but then you all do okay.
well, it's such a personal strip that it wasn't, I never thought, oh, who's my audience? What am I trying to do? And who is this going to appeal to? But I mean, it's really a character that I made to express ideas. And so it has a philosophical bent to it that is, and I just move Too Much Coffee Man to wherever the story is that I want to tell. Um, I mean, the short idea is that he's an intellectual, but he's kind of ignorant and stupid. So he'll explore these ideas, but from a place of innocence. And he drinks too much coffee. So there's a real manic energy going from manic obsessive to manic depressive. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
overrun with Protestant Jewish guilt, and intellectual without being too smart.
You put out Too Much Coffee Man in a mini comic in 1991, and
Yeah.
then it became a weekly strip also in 1991. 1991 was a huge year for comic books. Uh, can you describe what it was like at the time?
It was great. I think there were a few things that were happening. One, photocopy stores were everywhere. So you had a way to print mini comics. It was
Were they
cheap.
not everywhere before then?
They really, I mean, maybe the 80s they started to pop up everywhere, but they were ubiquitous by the 90s. And
Okay.
a lot of them too had these key counters. So you'd go and you'd either it was an honor system where they would say, how many copies did you make? And you would say 10 when you made 1,000, or they'd give you a key counter and you'd grab two of them and do 15 copies on one and then 1,000 copies on the other and then pay for the 15. So there's a cheap method of production that kicked in. And then a rung up from that was uh, the, getting distribution. So if you were going to do a comic book, Image Comics had just broken the DC Marvel stronghold on. Before that, it was Marvel or DC, and occasionally there'd be a little indie thing here and there. But when Image stepped in, all of a sudden, shop owners would were looking in the catalog in places other than Marvel DC.
And even Image.
Um, well, Image opened their minds up. So when did Image start? 90,
I think
90,
90,
something like that?
90, 90 or 91.
91. But they did us all a big favor by opening these all the mom and pop comic book stores. All of a sudden we're ordering 5 or 10 of everything. That and then the Turtles, they they made it look like you could make money off of independent comics. And so it was an acceptable risk to say, hey, I'm going to order 5 or 10 of these books. Maybe it'll be worth $300 or $400 down the line. And so investing $1 or $2 as a gamble, the shops were open to it. So it was a nice combination of things that all of a sudden enabled people to do comics. It was great.
I find that fascinating because I'm always fascinated about what an outlier the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are. And but the fact, it spawned a bunch of copycats
Yeah.
where those guys expected it to be as big as the Turtles, which come on. But
And they were lucky in a number. I mean, their timing was solid, and that they got a toy deal early. Yeah, I mean, they won the lottery, and they had the talent to back it up. I reread those comics recently. It's like, wow, there's just a genuine energy in these that's really magical. And yeah, going back, the comic books. I mean, what made me want to do comics was Stan Lee, because I would read those, you know, Marvel team up or whatever, and then there'd be Stan's soapbox, and he just made it look like a party. He would describe was it the the room where everybody was in there drawing, and you all
yeah.
these characters that were writing, and that just it sounded like a blast. And I was like, wow. DC on the other hand just seemed like this somber, uptight thing that I wasn't really. But Stanley sold it. I mean, it's a it's
It's true
it was
though. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, when people bash Stan these days, I'm like, you guys have no idea how much he was the dude at the front of the door being like, come on in.
It sucked me in. I was like, that's a party I want to go to. I want to have fun. And
Exactly.
the Turtles had that same energy where it really was fun. They made it just looked. And to me, like, good comics have that same kind of joy and love in them.
Who influences your drawing style for Too Much Coffee, man? And this I'm supposing this answer has probably changed as you have made Too Much Coffee, man.
Yeah, I mean, Basil Wolverton was a big influence on me early on. I stole a lot of the cross hatching ways that I approached that. And then Gilbert Shelton doing the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. Growing up, it was around the house. and it just his timing is incredible. His ability to tell a story is just I think unparalleled. Like he just moves it, the expressions, the pacing. So I've stolen as much as I can from both of them. Crumb, obviously. It was interesting trying to shift to the New Yorker stuff and like having to change styles and trying to push and challenge myself in different directions.
Yeah, you have multiple styles. So, all right. So let's talk about your Kickstarter for Too Much
Hmm.
Coffee Man, the original comic books 1 to 9. As of today, October 15 my time, October 14 your time. You have 19 days to go, 222 backers, and $10,130. That's already 5,000 over your original goal of 5,000. How important is meeting and exceeding the goals for Kickstarters?
I don't know. I mean, I just wanted to pay the print bill. That was my main thing, and anything over that is great. Yeah, I don't. I tried to start it off low. I figured I would come in, or my guess. I was thinking I'd come in around 10, but I might be able to push it up to 20 if things go well. Eh, you know, I just whatever. What what's funny is like I talked to some of as soon as you start a Kickstarter, you get hit with all this PR stuff, and people are, like, hey, we want to. Secret to a Kickstarter is promotion, and we'll, give us, 2 grand, and we'll promote the hell out of your book or whatever. I don't know what they want, but I've talked to a couple of them, and I start off by saying I don't want to do limited editions. I was like, it's a false scarcity that just bugs me. And I was like, I'm not going to charge $50 for a 1 out of 100 sign. I was like, I'll sign. I was like, if people want a signed copy, I'll sign it. I mean, and then there's this long silence because everything they have to make money and maximize profits is a gimmick. And I don't know. If I can do it without that kind of fake crap, then I just want to do some comics. It's
Yeah, I saw the other day that you posted the issue where Too Much Coffee Man dies on every other page.
Yeah, because it was like 91 or 92, 93. I don't know. Right in there, they killed Superman, and there was a big boom. And then uh, all these other people were killing heroes, and then they'd always come back a month or two later. And it was just a way to bump sales for a month. And it just burned all these people that thought, oh, there's the death of Superman. So I was like, okay, I'm going to kill Too Much Coffee Man over and over and over. Like every odd page, I'll bring him back every even page and just make a mockery of this stupid thing that everybody's doing.
What prompted this Kickstarter to release the
Uh,
originals? How many
well,
issues is this?
uh, okay. I call it 9 issues, but really it's 7 because I skipped 2 issues. I skipped issue 6 and 7. I was drawing the I was drawing the comics, and then I was starting to draw issue 6, and it was just so boring to me. I I knew I'd broken the story up into 3 parts. So I have the cartoon of Too Much Coffee Man, I have the writer, and I have a reader. And I knew where I wanted it to go. Like I had these arcs and I had this story. And then doing issue 6, like I knew in the plot line where it would sit. And it was just like paint by numbers at that point. I just felt it was just boring to me. And I just thought, I really want to jump ahead where I've kind of pushed the plot along. I want to be drawing number 9. Um, and then I just thought, well, why don't I just do that? And I'll just skip these issues and they'll be the rarest comic books ever. So it's 1 through 9, but yeah, I do kind of, it's like Scott McCloud's between panels or something. There's story in a panel that you never see.
Okay. That's a unique story that's never been told.
I've done a lot of dumb. That is what it was dumb because then collectors are like, well, I missed issues. I don't want to, it didn't help my sales, but I thought it was funny.
So I think you've already answered this question, but you are the first Kickstarter I've ever seen without any stretch goals.
I just want to do the comic. I mean, what would I thought I could do a hardback, I guess. I don't know. I mean, what like do a section with sketches, something stupid like that that doesn't take any extra work. Like it's a comic. I want it to feel it's the story that I want. It's the arc, it's the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's tight. I'll have these little intros in there. I don't what's a stretch goal that I
No more, no less, right?
comic. I
Yeah.
don't know. There's
So
beauty and poetry in it.
so here's my question about that because um observing the last 20 or so years of media, I feel like a lot of media has um started relying on a multimedia type of strategy where you're just present everywhere. You're in the movies, you're on TV, you're on webtoons or yeah, or all of that, and then you're on
Yeah.
merchandise. And you've never done that.
I well, yeah. I've just I early on I did put my comics on the web and everybody's like, "Oh, don't put them on the web because they'll read it there and they won't buy the books." And I was like, let them read it and then they'll buy the books if they like it." Um, I did merchandise early, even though all my friends were like, "Oh, that's selling out." And I was like, "Oh, no, I want a coffee mug. I like this. I'm doing it because I like it." I don't know. I genuinely like comics. I like the little weird crap that you can do on the side, but I don't know. I don't need to do a. I did an opera. That's kind of multimedia.
Yes, you
I don't know.
did. That
I've
surprised me
done
too.
stupid things.
That
Yeah.
surprised me too when preparing for this interview. I was like, "What? Really? Is that still showing anywhere?"
It pops up every now and again. I think there's another in Albuquerque. Danny's putting something together there. I'm talking to the Portland Opera Company about doing every now and again we'll pull it together and do some performances. It's nice. It's a real opera. It's not like, oh, we took Rossini and added a different libretto or something dumb like that. It's like I worked with a composer and we actually wrote this opera. Um, but yeah, that I was looking for something that would make less money than a comic book, I think. Have less appeal. I don't know, poetry's next, I think. It's like let's move to even more niche market than how niche can
Uh,
I get?
can you talk about some of the characters in Too Much Coffee, Man?
Sure. Too much common man is yeah, that's like a id. I mean, not in the sexual way, but just in the desire, the expressing desire of usually consumption of coffee or ideas. And then espresso guy is a foil. And so he's kind of folded up from the sarcastic, bitter, angry, so it's kind of like an Abbott and Costello where you've got that kind of innocence versus cynicism and anger. And then uh, everybody was telling me, "Oh, you should do," and they would give me these ideas about what characters I should do. And like, too much Coke man. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, well, what about too much Hershey chocolate man? I'm like, yeah, definitely not that. It was just so I did. I was like, well, what's a dumb thing I could do? So I did too much German white chocolate woman with almonds because that's just there's nothing. It's just dumb. I mean, but she
But
then
see,
turned into this character that I liked.
how do you determine what's the right type of dumb and what is the wrong type of dumb that you're not going to put in?
I don't know. I think I think when it hits the point of you can't do that, when I have that bell go off in my head of you can't do this. Why not? Well, it's against the rules. Like, because that name is too long and too absurd. Like, when I hear that, then it's like, okay, that's fun to, I'm going to cross that line. I'm going to do this stupid thing.
I love it. You got other characters in here. You mentioned trademark copyright, man.
Hmm. I think he only makes that one first in the first issue. And I had the Atlas, and Nick a Teenager. Atlas was somebody that exercised his body but forgot to exercise his mind. So he had a big, strong body. Underwater guy who just has a snorkel, so he just goes underwater and sits there. I Everything had to be dumb, kind of, is what I. If it made me laugh, then I would do it. If it didn't make me laugh, then I wouldn't do it. Maybe that was the litmus.
Nick a Teenager
I
is a
don't know.
great name.
Teen smoking, what could go wrong?
Of course, it was the
Perfect for
90s.
TV.
So,
Yes. That'd be some vape pun, I'm sure.
okay, so your Kickstarter, you've got some, what are these called? Pledge things? Rewards?
Tears. Tears.
Tiers,
Yeah.
right.
I'll sign it personally, like you want me to write, you're the best person ever. I'll write that. Whatever you can have it personalized and signed for an extra, I don't know, $5 or $10 or something. And then I'll do a drawing in there. I'll do another drawing on the side. I can't remember what that, like a $75. So that's a book.
Yeah, you got a
And
$75
then,
tier with a small 5x8 sketch.
yeah, and then I'll do a bigger drawing. And I've just started doing them because I'm like, okay, I better get ahead of this, because if I wait until I'm done, then it's going to take me another month. So yeah, I'm hoping really to ship everything in November so that people can have it as Christmas presents. Uh, is what I'm shooting for.
I am very, very interested in your $800 reward tier, which is that you will redraw a page from a comic
Oh yeah,
of their choice. You mean a page from Too Much Coffee Man or any comic?
I guess it would be any comic now that I think of it. Not Jeff Darrow. I wouldn't do a Jeff Darrow. Uh, um, Got
You're
to draw
not
the
that
line somewhere.
insane.
Right, right. Um, yeah, I was thinking Too Much Coffee Man, because there would be like, oh, I want this page, and the original pages, I don't know, I have some of them, but not a bunch of them are gone, and it would have been really hard. But I thought, oh yeah, I could redraw. Like, if somebody wants the cover of Too Much Coffee Man #1, I'm happy to redraw that. Uh, and then I thought, okay, I need to price it at a level where I won't be cursing the fact that I'm doing it. So I priced it a little bit on the high side, just in case too somebody said, "Oh, I want this crazy perspective page." That would be a nightmare to redraw. But I do. I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting and fun to redraw some of the old stuff. I have lost art once or twice, and when I was reproducing for Dark Horse, some of the books were, and I couldn't find the art. I went back and I just redrew it, and then later I found it. And it's interesting to see the 2 pages and how close I could get. I don't know.
All these years later, how do you look back on Too Much Coffee Man?
Uh, it's I mean, these days I'm feeling pretty good about it. I feel like, wow, I put myself on the page. Like, I sacrificed a lot of youth to do it. Um, I I sat at a drawing table, I really tried to. I did the best I could. I went all in. Like, where it falls on quality, I don't know. Like, eh, but it feels good to have done that, and I feel really proud of that. And I feel like, wow, it would be nice on the next project, whatever I do next, to be able to kind of go back into that same energy of like, I'm going to make myself vulnerable in this way, and put myself on the paper.
You currently do a Too Much Coffee Man strip for, is it for the New Yorker? I see it on Go Comics,
Um, oh yeah.
but Too
No,
Much
the New
Coffee Man doesn't show
Yorker,
up in it.
right.
So what's up with that?
I don't know, just branding. Yeah, because I'm still doing gag strips, and I'll do gag strips for the New Yorker, and then the local paper. I have a little spot in the local paper, and so I just put it in, and I just call it Too Much Coffee Man. But it's yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna thread that back into the universe in some way. Maybe I'll have Too Much Coffee Man reading that a book of these New Yorker cartoons eventually. I don't know what I'll do. Yeah, and I am working on a comic book version of the opera. So I took the libretto and I'm reworking it now. So I'm about halfway through on
So
that, and
so you
that's
want
been
something that'll
fun.
make even less money than the opera.
Exactly. I'm
You're a
determined.
madman, sir.
I want to die broke. That's my goal.
Don't you have children?
Yeah, it'll be fine. Let the state pay for them.
Okay. I want to ask you about a couple of I want to ask you about a couple of one pagers that you've done.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Because I always they really resonated with me. So one of them is the one which is like terrible gifts to get, so like Escher building blocks.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah, Escher building block. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so things
What's
like that. Like how do you even put that together?
um I think that one, yeah, it was a Surratt Connect the Dots, a Banksy DIY Banksy like art set or something, and then the kids drawing on the wall. How do I put that together? With that, I think it was a friend of mine wanted me to draw was it Oldenburg? He would take the miniatures like a safety pin and do a giant sculpture of it. And so he was like, "Oh, you should do a cartoon of um, miniature Oldenburgs." And so it'd be like just a life-size paper clip, right? And so that was the impetus of that gag. And I did that as a gift shop, and it didn't sell anywhere. And I was like, okay. And so then I started thinking of like, what are some other using that structure of an artist and then unfolding it in a way? How could I kind of pull that same gag and then build it out? And that's when I started thinking about other artists and kind of these interesting. I kept trying to figure out a way to pull Duchamp in because I love Duchamp and the new Descending a Staircase,
Yeah.
but I couldn't think of how to do him. But yeah, it was like here's the formula, here's the math, and then just apply that math to the other ideas and how far. And that one kind of unfolded nicely. I was surprised that I was able to pull it out into, was it 4 6 panels?
You have another one that isn't a funny one, and it really resonated with me, and I think I was surprised about how poignant it was. So it's two fingers doing this.
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, and right in between it says somewhere between anticipation and nostalgia, we should have been happy.
Yeah,
Can we drill down a little bit into the mindset that you had creating that one?
yeah. um I mean, that's a theme that I've thought about it since I was a child. Is like, what is now, like what is this moment that we're living, and then what is ahead of us and what is behind us. And so I've done a few variations on um that kind of how to look at life in this little place that we are in this stretch between the beginning and the end. And this is just another iteration of kind of expressing that. But this idea that you have anticipation for, always we're anticipating, and then to have thinking about our past, and yeah, it was just a turn of a phrase and a way to. I was like, yeah, we should. Basically, I'm trying to say you should be happy now. Like, and it's probably '60s crap that I grew up with, living in Berkeley and hearing, be here now and stuff like that. So it's probably a way to echo that, I think is what it is. But I take it seriously. I mean, like, I like that and how to turn that phrase and how to think about it in these different ways. I yeah, I liked that a lot too.
So how do you
Thank
feel
you.
about the modern pop culture zeitgeist, which is, it's driven a lot by nostalgia. I mean,
Yeah, I've been thinking about like I never the things I never anticipated. Like I never thought I would start to hate Star Wars. Like that there would be I as a kid, like nothing could have been better than to have a new Star Wars movie every year and a Star Wars TV show and some of them are they're good and I enjoy it, but it's like wow, I burnt out on Star Wars. Like who if I had told myself that, yeah, and I still like it. Like I'm not even, but
it's
yeah,
not
it
that you hate the new movies, it's just that there's so much of them. Is that it?
yeah, yeah, and it's just weird because it it used to be a Snoopy doghouse kind of thing where Snoopy would walk into his doghouse and then describe all, his Van Gogh painting and the pool table. And you would imagine this stuff. And same with Star Wars. Like I would imagine the card game where he's winning the Millennium Falcon. And I always thought like he's just always lying. It's a really crappy spaceship. And like I never thought it actually went fast. Like I thought that was just kind of because he's a liar, right? Like, and he's selling something. So I liked that. But then what they've done is they've gone back and they've shown everything in Snoopy's doghouse. So they go back and they retread the card game where he wins the Millennium Falcon, which it's so much better in my imagination. And I I want more of that where I'm hungry for I want that hunger to see something. I don't want everything given to me,
Yeah,
which I never thought would I if I'd told myself that, I would have been just, I would have laughed at myself.
I get it though.
And, I like the Picard, some of the new Star Trek stuff I'm liking. That new one with Pike, Captain Pike stuff. That's because it feels like old Star Trek. I don't know. Yeah, I like a lot of it, but at the same time, it's like, man, like, give me something where it's like Princess Mononoke, where you're just like, wow, this is a new universe that I just don't know. It's weird, and I have to think about stuff, and I rehashing the old stuff. Maybe that's my complaint about it is that I don't have to. I'm not working for anything. It's too easy.
Yeah, a common thing that I say is, "What? Another Batman?"
Yeah. What's his origin? I wish they would explain to me. I haven't seen that
And see, the thing
enough.
is, I liked the recent
Yeah.
Batman. Fine. It's just like, can I get Plastic Man at some point?
Oh man. Yeah, that would be amazing.
You can't tell me stretching powers wouldn't look good on the big screen. So,
Oh, they could CGI that. There would be no it get Andy Serkis doing the body language. Oh, yeah, they
oh
could totally
God.
do that.
Okay. Um, in 2011, you put out a book called "I Thought You Would Be Funnier," which is, so I think this is a great story, which is a book of rejected cartoons from the New Yorker. So my first question is, when you give a cartoon to the New Yorker, do they own it?
No, they are oddly liberal with their rights policies. So Menkoff, the old editor there, he wanted people to submit 10 cartoons a week. He felt like you needed to do that amount of work in order to do one or two good ones. And then, and so I would amass, hundreds of cartoons that were rejected. So it was pretty common. And usually I would, I would submit on a Monday or Tuesday, and then I would know by Wednesday or Thursday whether they bought one. And that's a little bit what I'm doing now with the new Too Much Coffee Mans is they're just rejected New Yorker cartoons. And then yeah, you sell one. But even when they sell one, they say, hey, we want to have rights to this for like I don't know, a few months or something, and then full rights return to you. And they pay well, and then they'll say, we would like to license this for you. This is our cut. You take this cut, and then you can sell it back to them to license, which is great. I mean, I don't. Everybody does that
It
that I
works
know,
out.
so it's great. Yeah, they are, and oddly unpretentious too. The other cartoonists are from the get go. Like I met Sam Gross, and he was just making fun of me, and it was just it's interesting because they are the most pretentious magazine with the biggest reputation. And so I expected that it would just be, everybody would have a monocle and it would be this uptight thing. And it wasn't at all. Like we all went out to drink and were drawing naked superheroes. Oh no, it wasn't even naked. It was drawing their poop. And so like I would draw like what the thing's poop looks like. So we're all sitting around drawing poop for 2 hours.
I can't imagine
And
Chris
it
Ware doing that.
Oh, he's the worst of them all. He'll do anything. That guy's great.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I knew him. I knew him back in Texas days.
Yeah, you went to college together.
Yeah, he was a little bit older, and we all just thought like, oh yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah,
Understatement.
yeah, I know. Right?
So let me ask
Uh,
you about that actually. When Chris Ware became Chris Ware, like how did you react?
he deserves it. I mean, it was just like, yeah, of course. It was kind of like yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like it's nice to feel that talent is recognized, and he works his ass off too. So that's another thing to see like that it pays off, and it's very satisfying to see
I,
that actually.
it's interesting because I think in many ways he's the exact opposite of you because I feel like your work is very id driven, as you mentioned, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you put yourself on the page, and I feel like he thinks meticulously about every single thing on every single page for
yeah,
the entire thing.
yeah. He's got a mathematical mind that is unparalleled. I mean, it's such a beautiful piece of art that he makes. And yeah, I mean, I've I felt a pull to be uptight in my life, and I've been like, no, I need to work in such a way and indulge this expression. Like I want to be more a Don Martin or do more Bill Watterson kind of like I want a body expression. I want to see where Robert Crumb has pushed those limits, and I like that kind of underground stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a push for me to go there, and that's partly what interests me.
So getting back to I thought you would be funnier. So I think this is a great story
Hmm.
because this is a collection of rejected strips from the New Yorker, which then got nominated for an Eisner, but got left off the ballot. And then you ended up winning that Eisner for best humor publication.
Everybody loves an underdog, and as like for 15 minutes after being left off the ballot, I was like, oh no, I've like that's it, I've lost, and this is a bummer. And then like Jamie Rich, who is in my book club, like I saw him and he's like, oh, I already voted. I was like, oh, I've lost. And then I realized I was like, wait a second, I could turn this into being an underdog and I can win this. All I have to do is, this is before um, it, everybody plays the victim, but I was like, oh, I can play this, which is kind of manipulative. So I played it. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, because now I've got a story, so I could talk to somebody and say I got left off the ballot, and then they're gonna root for me, and I can sort of like drive that. Yeah, it's a sales technique. It's a horrible, horrible thing.
It actually feels appropriately early 90s.
I shouldn't tell my magic tricks, but I have no shame. I have no shame.
But I'm thinking of like grunge bands, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a thing that they did a lot. It's like fight.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
My
Uh,
favorite is Negative Land. They were going to go on tour. They did the math and figured out they'd lose money. And so they decided to cancel their tour. And that week, there was a kid that put on a record, and then his parents yelled at him, so I can't remember if he just killed himself or he killed his parents. I don't know. It's a tragedy. And then Negative Land put out a press release saying we're canceling our tour because the record that the kid was playing was our record and we feel terrible. And it was completely phony. I mean, they just did this as a gag, and all of a sudden they got on every news station everywhere. Well, how do you feel about this? Like, oh, we feel terrible. It's horrible. It's just um but that Negative Land was a piece of art. It was beautiful.
But okay, that's a terrible story.
But yeah, I guess it is.
It's a great story, but it's a terrible story. I
I
think
ended up
all.
working. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just Negative Land. They're an indie weird band in the '80s, and they do a lot of noise weird. But I worked with a couple of them at a video game company when I was young, and so they were uh, they influenced me a little bit in terms of thinking like, how do you make this interesting? How do you make it fun and funny and weird? And they're a high bar. I mean, like they did conceptual art that is just amazing to me still.
Let me ask you about. So this is another time where I thought that you were a genius, which was Fractured Fables,
Oh
because
wow, yeah.
everyone. So Fractured Fables is a retelling of fairy tales and stuff, but everyone in that book, as good as they were, did a straight up story, except for two people. One was Bill Morrison, who did On Top of Spaghetti, and you, who
Huh?
did you did row 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 your boat, and literally all you did was you had a fisherman and a fish singing row 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 your boat, and it was charming as all hell. And I'm like, how did you conceptualize this thing? Like, how did you know this would be funny?
I I didn't. I mean, it was one of those things of like, how do I push a limit? Can do this? And then I started and I was like, yeah, this could work because um, yeah, it's that weird singing where it overlaps on itself. And I was like, I could make this work and overlap these images and this, yeah, and partly it's like being around Chris Ware and trying to think outside of normal comic storytelling. He was a big influence. I mean, like just reading his stuff in college, and just feeling like I can and I should push these limits. So yeah, being exposed to that was and yeah, Negative Land as well. Like, don't follow these rules. There's no reason.
Uh, to close this off, I'm going to ask you about a couple of books that you worked with. You illustrated for Portland-based writer Mark Russell.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was great.
So you have two books with him. God is Disappointed in You. So
Hmm.
I think a lot of people have turned this video off now. Um, and Apocrypha Now. And I
Yep.
think for me, what makes Mark such a great writer and such a prolific writer today is the fact that he's able to take a look at things in a very subversive way. Kind of reminds me of Steve Gerber,
Yeah.
but
Oh yeah. I never made that connection. I think you're right. Yeah. There is a Steve Gerber vibe.
he did all of that. He did those two books with you before he even got into comics. So what was that? What was that like? And did you expect it? Did you expect him to be, Mark Russell today?
Um, no, I mean, I didn't expect him to go into mainstream comics as traditional comics as much as he has. But it's deserved. I mean, he did a story early. It was at a zine convention. He did a story called the Superman stories, and they were zines, and he wrote these short stories about Superman, and I just thought they were brilliant. And so I started corresponding with him and bugged him saying if there's ever a project. He drew some little cartoons, little single panel cartoons in the Superman stories, and I just said if there's ever a project, like I'll do something, I'll illustrate something, I want to work with you, just because I liked his work so much. And then we were out drinking one time, and he was raised religious, and Pentecostal, and so he knows the Bible well, because that's being taught that the Bible is the letter, that it's the word of God. So every word in there is God's message to man. Um, so it's not a symbolic interpretation, it's a literal interpretation. And I wasn't raised with the Bible, and but I've always felt like I wanted to read it and understand it. And so we're there talking about Job, and I'm saying that Job is the worst pitch for religion ever, because God is a sadist. At best, he's a sadist, or he doesn't care, but he's using a man to win a bet with the devil. And so we just talked about Job for a couple hours, as one does in a bar. And he said it was more about it's not about God, that story. It is about man, and it's about temptation and faith. And this is and and he explained it in a way that I really liked, that I all of a sudden I could understand it. It was a different perspective. And then he wrote up this thing, and I drew a cartoon for it. And I said, look, let's do the whole Bible like this. And then we just started to shoot ideas back and forth on it, and put together a zine, and then pitched it to publishing companies, and went through a lot of different evolutions. But then yeah, Mark just, it was interesting, because he said that he had been kind of spoon fed these different little sections of the Bible, cherry picked this and that part, but reading the whole thing from beginning to end, it had all these parts to it that he just had never really understood before. And for me, it's like I wanted to read the Bible, and this was a way to really read it and try to understand it. So we went in not mocking it, but really going in intellectually, of like, what are these people trying to say, or what is God trying to say, or what is. And Mark said that a lot of it is an argument by these intellectuals about what the meaning of life is. These old Jews saying,
Yeah.
it's faith, it is hard work, it is serving God, it's serving yourself, it's serving your family. It's an argument, and in the real sense of the word. And that's why there's contradictions. But yeah, I'm still super proud of that project. I feel really good about it.
It's a really cool couple of books. So
And then the Apocrypha is just the odds and ends that were left out of the Bible. When the Council of Nicaea in 1300 or whatever, they're like, okay, this weird stuff where Jesus is a kid and doing these magic tricks, we need to leave that out. And so it's the Apocrypha, it's odds and ends. So that's we took those pieces and put a lot of some of the weirder stories into a book. I love the Jesus as a kid stories. They're really neat. Very pagan. A lot of it feels a lot more pagan.
Shannon Wheeler, you have Too Much Coffee Man, the original comics 1 to 9 out on Kickstarter. Congratulations. You're definitely gonna, because you're already double your goal. You're definitely gonna be putting it out. Do you have anything else that you would want to plug? And if not, or in addition to those, do you want to plug your social media?
Sure. Yeah, actually, I guess the stretch goals on the comics, now that I think about it, if it goes well, which I think it has, my goal is to put together a series of books. So I'm collecting the Too Much Coffee Mans, and then I want to collect the mini comics and some of the Dark Horse stories, and then the one-page comics. And so I can get 3 nice little books eventually out of it. Maybe more. Maybe I'll start to reprint some of the New Yorker cartoons that I feel good about. Social media, yeah, it's, I don't know, the link tree of Shannon Leo Wheeler. I've got an Etsy shop where I sell shirts and, I don't know, art and books that I have. Facebook is Twitter. I post stupid things on Twitter. Um, Instagram. Yeah,
But
I
again, it's
don't
the
know.
right
Yeah,
kind of stupid.
yeah, I, yeah. If I'm tweeting, I'm probably pooping. That's my.
All right. I have one last question. Uh,
I'm in.
and the last question is too much coffee man's coffee mug on his head? I don't even need to finish this question. Is it part of
Well,
him
it's the
or is it a
second time today somebody
costume?
else was asking that, and I like the idea that it's the skull. And I think
I
in
like how you
second
don't
grade,
know.
I don't know. Well, he started off with a cape and a watch, and I think I forgot to draw it, and then somebody's like, "Where's his cape?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have no idea. I just forgot. It was not. Yeah, there used to be kind of a line on his hand for the suit, and then I stopped drawing that for I don't know why. Um, yeah, but I like the idea that it's a skull. That's fun. But I think in second grade, they taught us about the copies. I think copies. It's like these little monkey guys with bowls of water on their heads, and if they spilled the water, then they wouldn't be able to move. And I think like somebody shot me a picture of that or talked about it recently. I was like, oh, I think that traumatized me when it scared the hell out of me as a little kid, but I was fascinated by it. I must have been 7 or 8 or something. So yeah, that's part of their head. So yeah, too much coffee man. I'd say part of his head.
You heard it here, folks. It is no longer a debate. It is not part of his costume. It's actually part of his head.
Yes. But whatever whatever works.
Of course, knowing you, you'd probably end up telling a story where it is part of his head and then another story where it's not.
Oh, absolutely. I have no consistency. It is really the worst. Yeah.
But it works for a character like this. That
Absolutely.
Thank you, Shannon Wheeler. Have a
Oh, it
great
was my
rest of the night.
pleasure, man. I loved it. It's good to see you again and chat and stuff. It's very very nice of you to accommodate.
And it's very nice of you to drop by. Thank you so much. Good luck.